Hi everybody. My name's Tom. I was born and raised a farmer's son, and I now help run a small dairy equipment business in West Wales. We work with about 450 farms. So before starting my presentation, I'd like to sort of explain that I'm basically or mainly an engineer and not a nutritionist. So I'm very grateful for Gareth and Holger from Holm and Laue for their input and assistance in preparing this presentation for you. Holm and Laue have been exclusively focused on calf rearing for well over 30 years now, and we've been dealers for 5 years. Our conversations with farmers, nutritionists and colleagues highlight a broad spectrum of opinions and ideas. However, there is absolute consensus on the importance of colostrum. It is the most important meal a calf can consume. Over the past 20 years, tremendous progress has been made in colostrum management, and but we now also understand more about timing, quality, hygiene and quantity than previous generations of farmers ever did. But once the colostrum period is over, the next question becomes, what should we feed next? And unsurprisingly, this question often creates more discussion than the colostrum itself. So should we feed whole milk or milk replacer? We don't think there is a simple answer. Both whole milk and milk replacer have strengths and both have limitations. Unfortunately, many discussions are sometimes presented as if farmers must choose one side or the other. Either you are a whole milk farmer or you are a milk replacer farmer, and this is not a helpful way of looking at calf feeding. As a dealer, we see successful calf rearers do not focus solely on one product. They develop a flexible feeding strategy, and good strategies remain effective independent of milk prices, availability of whole milk, or whether farm conditions change. The strategy should facilitate flexibility and accommodate both possibilities. So now I'd like to discuss whole milk feeding from a practical point of view and not as an alternative to milk replacers. So, why did whole milk feeding decline a little bit? And if we go back to the 70s, many dairy farms, many dairy calves were raised on whole milk. It was simply the most obvious thing to do. The cow produced milk and the calf drank milk. It sounded straightforward, but dairy farming was evolving. And since the 80s, milk replacer got a lot more popular. It improved dramatically as nutritionists gained a better understanding of calf requirements. They became more consistent, easier to handle and easier to store. And at the same time, whole milk feeding created practical challenges. Milk had to be collected, transported, stored, cooled. It had to remain hygienic. And every dairy farmer knows that whole milk can become a perfect growth medium for bacteria if management is poor. As a result, many farms moved towards milk replacers, and in many situations, that decision was logical. Today, we have milk replacers with excellent nutritional quality. They provide consistency and are available all year round. They can be formulated for different growth rates and relatively easy to manage. Therefore, when we're talking about whole milk feeding today, please understand this is not a discussion about whether milk replacers are good or bad. Modern milk replacers have contributed enormously to calf rearing success around the world. Our question is just a little different. Are there situations where whole milk offers advantages that we should not ignore? And we are convinced there are. At the end of the day, whole milk is the feed nature designed for the calf. That does not necessarily make it perfect, and nature is not always economically efficient, but it does make whole milk a useful reference point. And when we look at whole milk, we find several characteristics that are difficult to replicate completely. The casein protein is highly digestible, the nutrient profile is naturally balanced for a young calf, and beyond simple nutrients, milk contains many biologically active compounds. Some of these components are still not fully understood, whilst others are becoming increasingly important in research. During the first weeks of life, the digestive system of the calves is specialized for milk nutrients. Plant proteins cannot be utilized efficiently. Milk proteins remain the primary source of amino acids for growth. This is one reason why high-quality milk-based proteins remain so important during the early life of the calf. Whether these nutrients come from the whole milk or from a premium milk replacer containing substantial dairy ingredients, the principle remains the same. Young calves perform best when they receive nutrients that match the capabilities of their digestive system. and that is exactly why the first weeks of life deserve special attention. But a feed that often receives much less attention than it deserves is transition milk. We've talked about the importance of colostrum, but many farms still underestimate the value of transition milk. And this is the milk produced during the days immediately following colostrum production. It's no longer colostrum, but it's not yet normal, saleable milk either. And for many years, transition milk was considered an inconvenient byproduct. Today we know this is probably a bit simplistic. Research increasingly shows that transition milk contains valuable components that support calf development. It still contains elevated concentrations of immunoglobulins, it contains bioactive compounds, it contains growth-promoting factors. And these components appear to support intestinal development during a particularly important period in the calf's life. In this study, comparing transition milk feeding with CMR right after the colostrum period, they found out that the small intestine developed much better on the transition milk group. The villi in the intestine are much longer and allow a better digestion thanks to a larger overall surface. Therefore, one of the simplest improvements many farms can make is to ensure that transition milk is fed consistently during the first days after birth. But this requires organisation and extra storage, and modern automatic calf feeders enable the feeding of transition milk to calves with automatic and gradual change to milk replacer. Now, whenever we discuss whole milk feeding, somebody usually raises a hand and says that sounds very good in theory, but whole milk is difficult to manage. And for many years, this was absolutely true. In fact, we would argue that the biggest limitation of whole milk feeding was never the nutrition, it has always been management. Let's think a little bit about the dairy routine on a dairy farm. The milk has to be collected, transported, cooled, stored. It must remain hygienic before being delivered to the calves and at the right temperature. And all of that has to happen every single day. Unlike a bag of milk replacer, whole milk is a living product. Its quality changes over time. If we do not handle it correctly, bacterial growth can become a serious issue. And when bacterial counts increase, calf performance usually decreases. Many of the calf problems historically associated with whole milk feeding were not really caused by the milk itself. This means if we improve management, we can preserve the benefits of the whole milk. Part of this management is the storage of the whole milk, especially on automatic calf feeders where whole milk is stored in various containers. We still see plastic drums or old milk tanks without cooling systems. Traditional milk tanks are not designed to be used on automatic calf feeders. They are built to slowly cool the milk down during the milking process. But on automatic calf feeders, the tank is filled all at once and the cooling system needs to be powerful enough to cool the milk down within a short period of time. And the tank has to be cleaned on a daily basis to maintain a good level of hygiene. So there are many options to keep the whole milk system clean and safe. You can clean the tank and supply line manually, which is quite often forgotten. The auto feeder can run a supply line wash during its normal automatic wash routine, but the tanks will still require a manual wash. And with certain special milk tanks, the auto feeders can do a complete wash of the tank as well. But having a good technical solution to the tank is not enough when farm protocols are lacking. And we see this on farm with our own customers, where farm staff will come to the milk tank in the morning to refill it with milk, and the first task would be to clean the tank. But if it's inconvenient at this moment, or if there's still milk left in the tank, what does the worker do? The milk should be dumped and then the tank cleaned and refilled. But without rigorous on-farm protocols, most workers are saying, okay, we're not going to clean it this time, we'll do it tomorrow. And then they just top up the milk. And this happens day after day without the tank ever being cleaned. Modern calf feeders can also predict the amount of milk you need until the next fill moment. They know how much milk is still in the tank and how long it'll last, and they can advise refill quantity. And such systems ensure you have full control of your remaining milk in the system. But there are better ways. Milk storage tanks specifically designed for automatic feeders have 2 tanks available. When one tank is empty, the system switches over to the next tank, so there are no interruptions in feeding. And for the next wash cycle, the calf feeder also washes the storage tanks automatically. That means maximum hygiene and perfect flexibility. When discussing whole milk feeding, we recognize that not all milk available on a dairy farm is the same. There are essentially 5 categories. The first is the colostrum, and that belongs to the newborn calf. The second is transition milk, and as we have just discussed, this also has tremendous value for young calves. The third category is saleable milk, and that's the milk that generates income for your farm. And the fourth category is non-saleable milk, but we do need to be careful. Not all non-saleable milk should be fed to calves, and this is where we'd like to make a very clear distinction. Milk from treated cows containing antibiotic residues should not be considered as calf feed. On the other hand, milk from high cell count cows that are otherwise healthy may represent a useful feed source if pasteurized. And the fifth category is milk that sort of falls outside contract specifications. In some regions today, milk processors are actively discouraging overproduction, and as a result, farmers may receive significantly lower prices for that milk produced above contract volume. And suddenly that milk has little value in the marketplace and can become a valuable resource on the farm. And the key point here is you need to find out what kind of milk do you want to feed to your calves and how much of it you have available. I believe a significant development in modern calf rearing has been the increased use of pasteurization. This allows farmers to reduce bacterial loads significantly while preserving the nutritional value of the milk. In practical terms, this means we can use milk resources more safely and more confidently. It's not a miracle solution. Pasteurization does not compensate for poor hygiene. Dirty milk remains dirty milk, and poor cleaning remains poor cleaning. But when good management and pasteurization are combined, the result can be a highly consistent feeding system. Pasteurizing is a very simple task on dairy farms today. With batch pasteurizers like the milk taxi, the milk is heated to 63 Celsius and held for 35 minutes, which kills all relevant bacteria. For many producers, pasteurization has transformed whole milk feedings from a risk into a manageable process, thus transforming the economics of feeding considerably. There is a little bit of a hidden problem, which is dry matter, and it's often pointed out that whole milk is low in iron or other trace minerals, but a bigger concern for us is the general nutrient level in whole milk, and it can vary. So this graph is showing dry matter levels of several calf milk batches on an American calf ranch. All samples came from milk which is delivered from different dairy farms. Most samples were around the expected 12% dry matter mark, but a few were much lower. And why? We see similar situations when testing dry matter in the milk taxi before we feed it to calves. We think it appears during the milking process that flush water will often end up in the milk churns or in milk lines, and that's what reduces the nutrient level significantly. Just a 2% drop in dry matter means 20% less energy. So a good protocol would be to include a check of the dry matter with a refractometer on a regular basis, and then add milk replacer if needed to bring the energy back to the right level. Modern milk taxis and auto feeders assist you with the correct calculation of amount of milk powder replacer to add. Another concept that has been increasingly important is age-specific nutrition. During the first 4 weeks of life, the calf relies almost entirely on milk digestion. Casein proteins and lactose are effectively utilized. Whey proteins and plant proteins are not. This is why high-quality milk nutrients are particularly important during this period. These are either whole milk or high-quality skim-based milk replacers. As calves grow older, the situation changes. Calves are able to digest whey proteins and starter intake increases. The rumen develops. The calf gradually transitions from a milk-digesting animal into a ruminant. This means that nutritional strategies can evolve as well. The key message here is that feeding programs should follow the biology of the calf, and the transitions need to be managed. Calves are remarkably adaptable animals, but they do need time. Whenever we change a diet suddenly, we're asking a lot of the digestive system to adapt overnight. Biology really works that way. If we imagine feeding a calf whole milk for several weeks and then switching directly to milk replacer from one meal to the next, we can appreciate that the nutritional composition has changed. The protein and fat profile is different, and the digestive system suddenly has to cope with a completely different product. Can the calves adapt? Of course they can. But the question is not whether they can adapt, but whether they can adapt without losing performance. This is why gradual transitions are so important. A slow change over 7 to 10 days allows the digestive system to adjust naturally. If we want to provide gradual transitions between whole milk and milk replacer, modern automatic feeding systems can achieve this very effectively. Instead of changing every calf at the same time, individual calves can receive different milk mixtures according to their age and feeding program. A younger calf might receive predominantly whole milk, an older calf may receive predominantly milk replacer, and a third calf may receive a blend of both, all without creating sudden changes. The point here is not the machine itself, it is the feeding strategy. Technology should help farmers implement better calf nutrition. It should not become the objective itself. The best feeding system is not necessarily the most complicated one. It's the one that consistently delivers the right nutrition to the right calf at the right time. Incidentally, the same is also true for transition from one type of CMR to the other. You can start on a high-quality skim CMR and then gradually change over to a less expensive whey product during weaning. So looking ahead, what do we think calf feeding will look like in 10 years? So first, we will continue feeding higher volumes of milk than previous generations. The evidence supporting higher planes of nutrition is simply too strong to ignore. And if we need more milk to feed to the calves, whole milk becomes a limit and we need to compensate with milk replacer. Second, transition milk will receive much greater attention. We believe many farms still underestimate its value, but this will change, especially if we offer practical solutions to use it effectively. Third, monitoring and automation will continue to improve. Feeding systems will become increasingly capable of adapting to diets and individual calves. Fourth, sustainability. Maybe one of the strongest factors here. Consumers, retailers, and legislators are asking more of how food is produced, and whole milk has a positive image of being the original source of nutrition for calves. What these trends show is that flexibility will become more important than ever. Input costs fluctuate, milk markets fluctuate, labor availability fluctuates. Farmers need systems that can adapt, not systems that lock them into one single approach. So be flexible in what you feed to your calves. Find a good combination of whole milk and CMR. So some key take-home messages. Number one, colostrum remains the foundation of calf health, but colostrum alone is not enough. Transition milk deserves much more attention than it often receives. Number two, whole milk remains the biological benchmark for calf nutrition. 3, milk replacers continue to offer important advantages in consistency, flexibility, and supply security. They remain an essential component of modern calf rearing. 4, the question is not whole milk or replacer. The question is how to combine both effectively. 5, modern technology like pasteurizers should be used to reduce risk or disease transfer. 6, check your dry matter of the whole milk to give calves enough energy. 7, only cool and clean storage can maintain good quality of your most valuable feed resource. 8, gradual feed transitions are critical for maintaining calf performance. 9, tech should support biological needs, not replace them. Good management remains the most important factor in calf rearing. And finally, the goal is not to feed milk. The goal is to raise healthy, efficient, and productive future dairy cows. If we keep that objective in mind, the correct feeding decisions often become much clearer. And I hope some of the ideas I've sort of rushed through a bit here today will may be useful to you on farms or in your advisory work. Please come and see us outside on our stand if you want to ask us some questions. Gareth's here as well, and we look forward to a bit further discussion and your questions. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Tom. All right. So, thank you very much.